Let's talk about why it is so hard to set boundaries without guilt. I'm going to talk about both aspects of that, setting boundary and also relieving the guilt, where it comes from, and how we can resolve it, because it really holds us back in life. If you're new to me, my name's Rochelle Walsh. I've been a complex trauma therapist for more than 25 years, and I have a coaching program for women going from overwhelmed to calm and confident and being able to really transform that. Boundaries without guilt, you'll hear a lot about that because we all know that when we try to set boundaries, which is an outward expression, right, an action, it can be boundary with ourselves, boundary with someone else. So a boundary with ourselves might be that we say we're going to take time for something, and we're going to cut ourselves off at a certain point, not take work home, or we're going to not say yes to so many things and then we do. So we have internal boundaries that we need to set, or boundaries with other people that we need to set, and yet we have a sense of guilt that pulls us back. The first thing to understand is that guilt, it's a very habitual thing that happens. It happens in the nervous system. It happens with a chemical cocktail of hormones that are produced. It becomes very habitual, and our body's almost like addicted to it, and it's familiarized to it. It's become entrenched. And when we have that sensation of guilt that floods our body, our mind starts going to, what did I do wrong? Where should I be operating? Should I have said different? What should I have done different? What am I missing? What do I need to do to fix this situation? How could I have done something different in the past? What should I do differently in the future? Guilt really needs to be understood, because if we don't understand it, it's always going to be something that boomerangs us back to past patterns and doesn't let us really grow in the way that we want to. I am going to talk about that from the understanding that it's about safety, right? Guilt says, where did you cross the line? Where are you violating the rules? Now, these rules don't have to be rules that really make any sense, but they were rules in our family of origin, or they were things that our mind came up with, like, this is what you need to do to make people happy. This is what you need to be successful. This is what other people expect of you. This is what makes you good. This is what makes you fit into other people's mold. Or this is what you do to avoid uncomfortable feelings. So these shoulds are like all of these rules in our brain about how we should operate to make other people happy or to avoid uncomfortable emotions within us. I always encourage the ladies I work with to identify those rules that they have within around guilt and what are they violating, because we have to be able to recognize what it is, because what will happen is that sensation comes up in our body and it's so uncomfortable and it's so habitual that our mind then goes immediately to the story. What did I do wrong? What should I have done differently? How could I recreate the situation? How could I avoid future pain? And it goes into a narrative. This is false guilt. Now, there is a healthy aspect of guilt that has to do with a true need for repentance. Like, God says this is where I have, done something that's against my values, against what God would have me do. This is what I've done that has hurt another person. How do I need to take responsibility for that? That is a healthy form of guilt that leads us to growth. How do I want to do things differently? How can I make amends? That's really healthy. Healthy guilt promotes toxic patterns. It covers, it feeds shame. And so there's really no upside to healthy guilt other than it helps us relieve temporary discomfort, because it gives us a false sense of responsibility. If I can take responsibility for something that's not my fault, then I can avoid this uncomfortable feeling. If I can worry enough, if I can fix enough, if I can please enough, if I can perform enough, then I won't feel this uncomfortable sensation. I won't have to experience somebody's rejection, somebody's displeasure, somebody's disappointment. So I'm going to go through some forms of guilt that we need to release if we want to be able to set boundaries. A lot of times what people do is they try to set the boundaries in outward action, and they haven't done the internal work. And so that boundary on the outside causes distress and discomfort, which it will. And if they can't move through that discomfort, then they abandon the boundaries. So if you want to set boundaries without guilt, you have to work on the guilt to allow yourself to set the boundary. And I think a lot of people get that wrong and try to set the boundaries without being prepared to move through the emotions that come with that. Because when we set a boundary, usually if it's with another person, there will be a disruption, right? Something's going to be different. So here's the kinds of guilt we need to release. First of all, we need to realize that if we are growing, there's going to be a certain amount of guilt that comes back that says you should stay the same. So we have to abandon guilt that comes with growth. If you are growing and if guilt has been kind of a mainstay in your life, you're going to experience some guilt. Like, this isn't the way my family did it, or this isn't the way I've always done it. I'm breaking a rule. I'm doing something wrong. I'm stepping outside the code. I'm breaking the family rules. I'm breaking my own expectations because I'm doing something different. So if you're ready for growth, you need to be ready to experience a little bit of guilt, and you need to be worked through and release that guilt because it's trying to hold you back. Okay, we need to release guilt of other people's pain. Unless we caused it, guilt is not an appropriate reaction for other people's pain. We can have compassion without feeling the responsibility for being the one to fix it or taking on responsibility that in some way we caused it, or if we could have been better. Even people we love are going to experience pain, disappointment, anger, frustration. They're going to make different choices than we would, and we have to release guilt that comes with other people's emotions. We have to relieve guilt for saying no. No is healthy, right? But it's not enough to just say it. We have to move through the guilt that comes sometimes when no brings about displeasure or discomfort for someone else, or causes someone else to be disappointed, or if they don't like it. We have to be able to move through the guilt, because if we don't, the assumption that we've done something wrong is going to make us retract. So we have to release guilt that comes with no. No is not a bad word. No is oftentimes very, very healthy. And so guilt that accompanies that is often misplaced. The next thing is the loss of relationship. A lot of times we believe that if we're doing things right, if we're doing things to the best of our ability, that relationships should work out. Live at peace with everyone, so much as it is up to you. And it's not always up to us. Relationships are two-sided. So if there's loss of relationship, sometimes there is a shame that goes with that, whether it's a friendship, intimate relationship, distance with family. But sometimes, in this broken world, there is loss of relationship. And sometimes that's for the better. Sometimes there was an unhealthy dynamic in relationships, and protecting the relationships allows the dysfunction to go on more than it should. So if there's a loss of relationship, that doesn't always mean that we are guilty. So we need to be able to release that so that we can have healthy boundaries in relationship. Releasing guilt for relaxation. A lot of times this over responsibility is like, I should be doing this, I should be doing that. It's not okay to relax. That's usually trauma-based or just an internalized sense of I should always be doing something, I should always fix it. It's not okay to relax. It's not safe to be in my own experience. If I relax, I'm not safe, or I'm not getting things done. I'm not being productive. Production, I'm not worthy if I'm not producing. So we have to relieve guilt for relaxation. This has to do with boundaries around our time and how we take care of ourselves. So it's super important to be able to release guilt around relaxation. And the last thing is that we need to, and there's many more we could go into, but for the sake of time and just being able to give you the nuts and bolts of this, being able to release guilt around protecting ourselves. So whether this is self-protection in a physical way, an emotional way, guarding our standards, guarding our time, we have to release guilt for doing things that are protective of ourselves that might tend to make us feel guilty, like I'm putting my needs ahead of somebody else. Well, here's the thing, as much as we want to be attentive and responsive to and good brother and sister and wife and daughter and disciple and caregiver and mother and all of the roles that we fill, God gave us one mind and one body, and we are to steward well what He gave us for the greater good. So when we are not stewarding that well, we're not taking care of our physical self, our emotional self, our spiritual selves, we are not going to live as fully in our purpose as we could, and that will cheat everyone. So we have to release guilt that comes with how we protect our own interests so that we can also be the best version of ourselves for others. So I hope this was helpful. Boundaries without guilt is super important. But again, if we don't really dig in and understand and make an attempt to release false guilt, it's going to be very difficult to set and maintain healthy boundaries and stay in growth mode. So I hope that's helpful. I have a masterclass below, Secrets to a Calm Mind, if you're interested in listening to that and learning more about the brain and the neuroscience of our nervous system or subconscious mind. I also have a 90-day program for women, so called Joyful and Present. Check it out for more information if those things are of interest to you. Otherwise, just see you in the next video. Bye.